Today, we're going on a fast-paced, cosmic detective hunt to find the true spark of life. Okay, let's dive into this. It all starts with the ultimate, unbreakable rule of the universe, the second law of thermodynamics, entropy. Basically, entropy is the universe's unstoppable decay into chaos and equilibrium. Think about it. Old paintings fade, your hot coffee cools down, even massive stars eventually die out. Everything, and I mean absolutely everything, naturally decays. It never goes backward. You've never seen a shattered egg suddenly put itself back together, right? But here's the massive cosmic paradox. Life is the ultimate rebel. It absolutely refuses to decay into chaos, well, at least while it's living. Just look at a single cell with its incredibly organized, tightly wound genetic code. To pull off this impossible rebellion against the universe, life needs one crucial thing: energy. Plants furiously suck up solar energy just to build sugars. Animals constantly consume plants or each other just to keep their physical structure intact. Heck, even in Hollywood movies, when a ghost appears, the room gets freezing cold, right? Because the spirit has to furiously suck up thermal energy from the environment just to stop itself from dissolving back into nothing. Life is just this constant, energetic, knockdown, drag-out fight against the rules of physics. But, for a massive chunk of human history, we completely ignored those laws of physics. Enter the great Greek philosopher Aristotle. Back in the 4th century BC, he promoted this wildly bizarre myth, and for 2,000 years, humanity bought into it hook, line, and sinker: spontaneous generation. I'm serious. The greatest minds actually believed that dead leaves falling into a pond magically turned into fish. They thought mud spontaneously generated frogs, and that morning dew just conjured up insects. For millennia, humanity bought into this idea that life just popped out of nowhere with zero energetic cost. It wasn't until the 19th century that the French chemist Louis Pasteur finally debunked this ancient myth. At the time, people still thought maggots just magically appeared out of raw meat. But Pasteur used this brilliantly simple swan neck flask. He boiled broth to kill all the microbes and showed that, hey, as long as dust and bacteria from the air couldn't get in, that broth stayed completely sterile forever. He proved definitively that life only comes from existing life. Case closed, right? Now, what's really interesting about this concept is the ultimate cosmic irony hidden inside it. Pasteur was completely right about our modern world, but actually, Aristotle wasn't entirely wrong. He was just off by a few billion years. Because roughly 3.9 billion years ago, long before any living cells existed, life did have to come from non-life. To understand just how impossible this sounds, we really have to look at the brutal, chaotic reality of the early Earth. Picture this. The early Earth wasn't some peaceful, stable blue marble. It was a dizzying, violent rock. It spun so madly that a single day lasted just 6 frantic hours. The whole planet was basically a hyperactive, boiling sphere hurtling through space. And the sky? It was dominated by a looming, giant moon that sat terrifyingly close to the Earth. Because it was so close, its gravitational pull was absolutely immense. It dragged violent, massive tidal waves, literally hundreds of feet high, crashing endlessly across this churning global ocean. There was barely any land at all, just a few volcanic islands poking up through a boiling sea. Oh, and it gets worse. This apocalyptic environment had absolutely zero oxygen. No oxygen means no ozone layer. And without an ozone layer, the Earth was relentlessly bombarded by deadly, unfiltered UV radiation from the sun. If you somehow stepped foot on this planet, you literally wouldn't last a minute. It was without a doubt the most toxic place imaginable for life to spark. To put this timeline into perspective, let's compress Earth's 4.6 billion year history into a single 24-hour clock. Midnight is our fiery wasteland, yet shockingly the very first rudimentary cells appear by 4 a.m. Complex cells don't even show up until 1 p.m. The dinosaurs? They get wiped out at 11:45 p.m. And us, humans? We only make an appearance at 1 minute and 17 seconds to midnight. Life sparked unbelievably early in all that chaos. So we're left staring at that 4 a.m. mark. How on earth did delicate little cells form in a violent, boiling, toxic ocean? Well, for decades, scientists have been on this desperate, obsessive hunt to find the chemical spark that somehow turned dead rocks and water into living biology. And in 1953, it seemed like 2 scientists had actually solved it. Stanley Miller and Harold Urey created the incredibly famous primordial soup experiment. Their recipe? simulate Jupiter's gases, add some water, and blast the whole thing with artificial lightning. Within weeks, they actually created amino acids, the fundamental building blocks of proteins. The scientific world absolutely went wild. The mystery was solved, right? Lightning hit a chemical soup and boom, life was born. But here's the twist. That soup was a complete lie. Miller and Urey just had the wrong recipe. It turns out early Earth's atmosphere wasn't packed with methane and ammonia like Jupiter. It was mostly carbon dioxide and nitrogen. And guess what? When you zap carbon dioxide and nitrogen with lightning, you don't get a rich, life-giving soup, you get practically nothing. So the primordial soup theory, a complete bust. Just as we hit a dead end, the universe threw us a massive curveball. September 28, 1969. A blazing fireball shatters the morning sky over Murchison, Australia. It explodes with this massive sonic boom, scattering thousands of fragmented space rocks all across the outback. When scientists finally analyzed the Murchison meteorite, they found particles of silicon carbide inside it that were mind-blowingly old. We're talking 7 billion years old. Let that sink in for a second. This rock was formed before our Earth or even our Sun completely existed. But here is the absolute punchline. Inside this ancient rock from deep space, scientists found the exact same amino acids that Miller and Urey had tried so hard to cook up in their lab. Life's fundamental ingredients didn't need a primordial soup on Earth. No, they were already floating out there in the freezing void of the cosmos. The building blocks for life were literally falling from the sky. Now, this discovery led to a massive scientific misdirection. Biologists became completely obsessed with the genetic code. They theorized this RNA world where RNA molecules somehow linked up in a soup and just magically started multiplying. But in their frenzy, they forgot the most important rule of the universe, the energy problem. They totally ignored the laws of physics. So the crucial point is this. Having the ingredients for life is completely useless without an engine to power them. You can't just have the parts, you need the power. Remember entropy? A soup full of floating chemicals isn't going to magically organize itself into complex, multiplying DNA without a massive, continuous, and highly specific flow of energy. Life at its core is an engine that constantly fights entropy. Now, some people still try to argue for lightning as that power source, but biochemist Nick Lane actually ran the numbers on this. To provide enough continuous energy to power the creation of life, you wouldn't just need a random lucky spark. You would literally need 4 lightning strikes per second, per square kilometer, constantly, without ever pausing. That is physically impossible. Lightning is way too sporadic to be the steady engine of life. Okay, so what about the sun? Well, in 2009, chemist John Sutherland showed you could use deadly UV rays and cyanide to create some molecular building blocks. But UV rays are a massive double-edged sword. Yes, sure, in a highly controlled lab, they can force a chemical reaction. But out in the wild, toxic UV radiation is vastly better at destroying and shredding delicate molecules than it is at powering them. And using cyanide as a primordial power source? That's equally bizarre. Cyanide is a lethal poison. In modern biology, it literally binds to your cells and completely stops cellular respiration in its tracks. It doesn't power life, it suffocates it instantly. Absolutely no known organism uses cyanide for fuel, and none use UV rays directly for their foundational energy. You see, the whole idea of the primordial soup assumes you can just take a bunch of dead chemicals, hit them with a random jolt of lightning or UV radiation, and life will just spring forth. But shocking a dead body doesn't create life. Frankenstein is a myth. You can't just zap a chemical corpse and expect it to get up and start walking. The fundamental thermodynamic problem with the primordial soup is that it was at equilibrium. And in chemistry, equilibrium is a dead state. It means the chemicals have already settled down. They don't want to react with each other anymore. There's no energy flowing. Without a continuous driving force, those chemicals just sit there, slowly decaying over millions of years. And this brilliantly illustrates the problem. Hoping RNA will just magically start replicating in a dead chemical soup is exactly like putting a state-of-the-art computer inside a car with no engine and expecting it to drive. The code is completely useless without the hardware to process it, and the hardware is totally useless without the combustion engine to push it forward. So here we are. We know life exists, obviously, and we know it requires a staggering, non-stop flow of energy to rebel against the chaotic decay of the universe. The primordial soup? It was a dead end. Lightning couldn't do it. Space rocks only brought the raw metal, not the spark plug. So I leave you with this burning question. If the soup was completely chemically dead, where in the violent, chaotic early Earth did life find its true engine?